we're back for another episode of the Bad Ideas podcast with Shua Seif. How are you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm so pumped to have you here and to learn that you're a musician, but you do a bunch of things. Let me walk through it. So you're the CEO of Sapphire Healthcare. You're a venture partner with Stand Together, and you're a partner with Live for Live Music. How do you choose where to focus and where to spend your time?
I like to do all of it simultaneously as much as possible. Whatever the needs are at the moment is where I rear my head. Some are
That
more passion projects and self-actualization things than others, and it's important to
yeah,
keep that as a constant in my life as well.
yeah. It's got to be a challenge with like so many things kind of fighting for attention at the same time, particularly all at scale, with unique demands. I feel like it's fun doing the show because we're talking about just one idea, but every now and then we get lucky enough to meet someone like you who's driving many at the same time, and that's kind of a bit of magic.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I can't imagine just doing one thing.
Got to keep it fresh. All right. Well, we're here. You can hear me okay, right?
Yeah, I think so. We got a little buffering, but mostly pretty good. Yeah.
All right, cool. Wanted to make sure it wasn't my connection. We're gonna take a look at a bad idea in a second. So order of operations, I'll read off the bad idea that neither one of us is prepared for. So this
Okay.
will be live improv for music fans. We'll talk about why it's an awful business idea for as long as we can, and then we'll flip the script and try to make it fun. That
Okay.
sound good? All right. All right, here we go. Let's see what we have today. Our bad idea is sleep while you wait ER, an emergency room where patients are put into induced comas while waiting to make waiting experience more comfortable for the patient and more manageable for the admins. What's your reaction?
um, I like the hypothesis. uh, one of the hardest things about being in the nursing home business is
Uh,
typically, I think the patient actually is not the hardest part about it. I think it's a
yeah.
lot of it's the employees and some of the family members. And so my immediate reaction as well, if we could put everyone to sleep all the time, well, that would uh certainly,
So,
but
bro.
obviously there's some major issues with that. Um,
Mm.
my initial reaction is obviously it's a little out there.
Yeah.
Can you repeat it one more time, just so I make sure I hear all the parts?
Yeah, this is absurd. So, sleep while you wait ER. So, it's an emergency room where patients are put into induced comas while waiting to make the waiting experience more comfortable for the patient and more manageable for the administrators.
Okay. Um, well, the idea, flat out, first of all, to make it more manageable, it would be the opposite. Because the amount of labor and manpower that you need to induce
To
to
keep,
supervise those medically, not to mention the invasiveness of the procedures that happen.
yeah, I
Going
can only imagine.
throats over there.
Yeah.
So from a health perspective, I'm going to kind of shut that down right away. It is any invasive procedure that is unnecessary should be avoided at all costs. Um,
Yeah.
sounds like something that is more in the back end with what you say, that it's to make it more manageable for, for the staff. That's what I think the impetus of the idea came from. Um, but no, I think it's a pretty terrible idea.
Yeah, this is a bad one. I'm thinking not I've been very lucky and haven't spent a lot of time in emergency rooms myself, but I think that's probably where this is coming from. Like, someone got hurt and had to go to the emergency room and had to wait like 6 hours. Because it's not super comfortable, but at the same time, how do you can't really make it comfortable. Solving that problem doesn't it makes it a little nicer for the people waiting, but it doesn't really help the physicians. The backlog is still there. So it's almost like the more comfort you create, the more waiting you invite. I don't know.
Yeah, certainly from the hospital perspective, I think it would actually be more work to do this. Therefore, it's could be
Mm.
one of two things I'm thinking here. From the is it a person who was at the ER for 6 hours, for example, that was like, man, I waited so long, I would have rather been put to sleep, or was it someone who are waiting and witnessing some crazy behavior for some fellow people who are like, I wish they were put to sleep. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
from that perspective, I understand it. but from a hospital perspective, I can't imagine it would possibly be uh, feasible.
Yeah, it's not. Are things like, you're in this space, things like waiting rooms, um, like there are rules for everything. The second you walk into a hospital, I imagine everything is extremely regulated and what you can and can't do. But is that from a business or entrepreneurial, more creative perspective, are problems like that problems that are kind of even partially open door for entrepreneurs to try to solve? Or like, how do we make it easier for people to be in the hospital or get to the hospital or wait in line at an emergency room?
So
Like,
I 100% do believe in the free
yeah,
market. And yes, there's a lot of people that are always trying to disrupt the current ways of doing things. I think it is a huge problem in general. I believe it, entropy, things fall apart. So people are just waiting, sitting around. It's not a good thing. You have to keep
yeah,
moving. From simple things as having TVs or iPads or things in waiting areas to keep people engaged, keep people busy. That certainly limits the amount of complaints. People will probably feel less pain and anxiety, and it just makes the
yeah,
process smoother overall. But 100%, as you're going through any process of business, you should take a look at every single component and think, what can we do better? I know that recently my family and I have been doing a lot of Disney trips, and they have this crew of people called the Imagineers. And it seems that they go through every single nuance from how a door handle is to how the line wraps around somewhere. But they
yeah.
take a look at everything and think, what can we do to make it better? And certainly, I think the ER would be a prime. The fact that this idea popped up means that there's work to be done.
Yeah, yeah. Like, how do you make it better? I mean, the problem there is who's really the customer? Is it the person waiting or is it the hospital? Like, who benefits the most from a better waiting experience, do you think?
Um, Patient first mentality, certainly the patient, will
Hmm.
benefit the most. But on the flip side, the business from a hospital will benefit. If it's calm and peaceful, think of less security staff needed in ER because of people going haywire. You always see police officers and security staff in ER.
Yeah.
Um, you will have less staff that you need to hire in general because it'll be more manageable. But having an efficient ER system benefits everyone. You don't want to overflow beds in the ER. You want to have a consistent
Mhm.
rotation so you know how to staff appropriately so you're never understaffed or overstaffed. A
Yeah.
lot of, is up to whatever's happening at the time. You can have floods of people coming in at rushes, at 3 o'clock in the morning. So they do always have to be
Mm.
prepared. So I'm sure sometimes it gets a little crazy with it.
It's just a hard thing to manage. Like, how do you prepare for everything and build some sort of elastic solution that's comfortable in high demand and comfortable in low, but also affordable to manage? It seems like this idea, outside of the fact that inducing people who are not actually in the emergency room into comatose is kind of a bad preemptive measure. But like, this kind of dies because there's so many variables there before you even get started that you can't even attack the core problem, which is how do we make this experience a little better, right?
Correct. I think they're just basically throwing their hands up in the air and saying, let's just knock everyone out. But at the same time, metaphorically speaking, you can figure out something to completely engage a person while waiting would be an appropriate methodology to approach this problem.
Completely engage. So, this is timely because like 2 weeks before we recorded this, the Vision Pro came out, and now everyone is walking across the street with Apple glasses on. I'm waiting for the car accidents to start happening. I hope they don't. Fingers crossed. But
It's
do you
ironic
think
that
something like,
it's ironic that complete engagement and complete disengagement might be the same thing.
yeah, right? You're so totally immersed in something that's not even there. But is something like that? I mean, is that more viable from an ER perspective? Like, here's a headset, go get lost. Mm.
Yeah, I do think so. Think about traveling. You go on airplanes now with little children all the time, and they've got their iPads, and they're probably crying less
Yeah.
than we were when we were on airplanes. There's just, that TV screen. 100%. I think people can be easily fooled into spending time and ignoring pain if they're easily distracted.
Yeah.
I do believe every waiting area should have that. In fact, I think that's actually something that healthcare overall can do a better job. Healthcare is if you're in a hospital for a day, it's a series of moments. Your nurse comes in, your doctor comes in. There's so much time in between, and you don't know what's going on. There's a massive anxiety, blood pressure is high. If there was better engagement in healthcare settings, I think it would be better for everyone.
Hey, that's a
Yeah.
that's a pro tip for the show. We've highlighted a business opportunity. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Let's not put people to sleep though. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not a physician, so I can't tell you exactly what happens to your body, but I do have ventilator um, programs in some of my facilities. So I know what
Yeah.
comatose patients are like, and going in and out of that state uh, at whim, nilly-dilly in mass would be an absolutely wild thing. Um,
Really bad idea.
but who knows? Who knows where technology will take us at some point? I know they have Profilol, or when they have put you in Twilight, for example, it's kind of a, simple little procedure. Put you in, put you out for, some outpatient procedures like colonoscopies and endoscopies and things of that nature. So
Yeah.
it could be that maybe down the road, if you're there for 4 hours or 8 hours, they're like, let's just put you to sleep for a little bit. But in a comatose state would be, I think that's
A little
pushing.
too severe. A
Yeah.
little too severe. It's interesting that you talk about like making it easier, making it more engaging and comfortable for you when you're between procedures. The there's a company, a guy I met up in Boston runs a company that goes on location around the world and films these like VR kind of viewscapes with the sounds and everything. And has a VR program where people can, from a hospital bed, tune in and kind of travel around the world and experience all the things that they've put together. And I mean, it's VR, but it's as close as you can get to being there without leaving your bed. And they've been really successful.
It's fantastic. But there always has to be a many different ways to do it. Someone's going to eventually get bored of something that's not going to approach everyone. What if a person can't do it themselves? Can someone else do it for them? But no, it really is a gap actually in healthcare.
Yeah.
Hospitals and most systems just want to solve the problem. Are they really focused on quality of life? I personally feel like healthcare settings, before it gets really significant medical problems, like assisted livings or independent livings, are more focused on the quality of life. Whereas nursing homes, they just want to make sure you don't acquire wounds or get pressure ulcers. Of course, you've got your activities programs and you try to keep everyone busy, but the people, just from their own comorbidities and age, well, health status, may have a harder time enhancing that quality of life component. I think there's a real opportunity. Frankly, it's our responsibility to make sure they have that. Just because
Mhm.
someone is sick or in a hospital or an ER doesn't mean that everything, that the joys of life should have made them.
Yeah. That's that's deep and from the heart. I appreciate you sharing. I mean, why do you think there isn't a bigger market of people, or well, at least companies kind of competing for that attention or trying to solve the problem, you know? Except this bozo.
Um, you ask a good question. I recently was putting together this whole business model for, which I might do at some point, music for elderly people, basically making it more available to them.
Yeah.
I think that the answer to your question is the money doesn't follow. A lot of these nursing facilities and healthcare were reimbursed by insurance companies, reimbursed by Medicaid, Medicare, and the margins are so razor thin um, that any additional expense it really becomes a burden for most operators. I long for the day when you get reimbursed by some sort of metric where if you increase the quality of life.
Yeah. So the measure needs to be there to highlight the opportunity and justify the cost.
Correct. Or it should be completely reimbursed by, if they're going to reimburse you for putting an IV in a person, they should reimburse you for having that type of VR experience. Who's to
Mhm.
say that a little more hydration is more important to a person than having the joys of music or,
Yeah.
around the world? I think that's a
So that
subjective thing the world has accepted.
yeah. So do your ventures converge at all? I mean, you have Live for Live and you have Sapphire. Do you guys ever cross wires, or can you?
Yeah, I can tell you that I've definitely thrown some good holiday parties with some of the best musicians around the boat. I can do that. Um, they converge more often than you would think. I think my approach to both
Yeah.
really is the same. Live for Live Music is a media company, but we also do a lot of our own shows and festivals. And it's primarily focused on the jam band, live improvisational uh, type of music. And I think in business and in healthcare, things are fluid. You have to be able to
Mm.
change at a dime. And so there's a common thread there, certainly between the companies in my approach.
Yeah, interesting. But just thinking about engagement, I mean, there's definitely something to music. And to your point earlier, too, about who's to say like a VR experience or some kind of engagement doesn't do as much as a little hydration. Um, I've been reading about that a lot about like psychosomatic effects. And I mean, I'm not implying that you can say one is definitively like more powerful or less than the other, but um, it seems like, again, to your point, things that are accepted as fact in the West might be the actual barrier to more people trying to, solve these problems instead of looking at the hospital as the end all. Maybe it's a complementary approach that could make this a little better.
Certainly agree with that. I think when we accept paradigms or accept realities and just try to make it a little better, maybe you should just burn the house down from day one and try to rebuild from scratch.
Yeah, yeah. We'll
Like,
burn down the waiting room. That's our next
exactly.
bad idea.
If someone's coming up with an idea that,
Yeah.
hey, let's figure out, ways to completely disengage or completely engage, right? In ERs, maybe we really need to be asking different questions. What is an ER? Why is it there? Is there a better way to do this?
Mhm.
Because clearly it's gotten so out of hand that people need to self uh, put themselves out, or
Yeah.
want.
I mean, from my understanding, outside the space, like ERs exist specifically to control like the flow of work and procedures for the physicians, right? It's a holding facility to make sure everyone doesn't come all at once, but also like to make sure that your staff is appropriately like equipped to handle the people that are actually coming in for procedures.
Yeah, and a
Is
lot of
that
people
is
aren't
that the
admitted
point?
to the hospital. A lot of people are just triaged
Mm.
and sent out. A lot of people show up to the ER when they should be showing up to little urgent cares by their home. A lot of people show up to the ER when they should be calling their primary care physician. It's a big issue in
Yeah.
ER. Some people just treat it like a doctor's office. It really should not be.
Mm. Interesting. And you think that's just an education thing, or like because it's easy and it's available, people just default?
Um, Several reasons for that. It could be an access to care issue. It could be an education thing. It could be an insurance type situation. I certainly know in some cities that, weather related, it's a place for people to go instead of being outside in certain cases. Behavioral health is certainly a major issue that plagues a lot of ERs. Uh, that now smart providers are coming up with ways to not have the person go to the ED, but rather get diverted to their
Mhm.
facility. That comes with smart policing is connected to that. Police are bringing lots of people to the ER that perhaps they shouldn't. If social workers were there with police officers, a lot of people wouldn't end up in EDs.
Hmm. You're I'm going to venture out on a little improv here, see if I can tie all of these things together, and then I'm going to propose another potentially bad idea.
Okay.
Um, so we talked about people going to the ER for the wrong reasons. We talk about the load of the ER and why we can't just put people to sleep, and we talked about how there's probably a need for other ways to engage people that are waiting. And your specific point that there's multiple different types of engagements that are needed. It's not just one thing, and it's never going to work if it's just one thing. Um, on the music side, which we haven't talked about yet, there's always a need for a stage. I think when people are creating something really new that isn't so known, like you can't just go into a mainstream bar and have the bar owner allow you to do this. So what if the stage at an urgent care is the solution to the ER waiting experience? So you actually have some sort of like state grant that sponsors musicians and gives them a perpetual stage at urgent care. So people kind of think to go there first because it's so much more pleasant, and the ER becomes more of a necessity solution.
Wow. I've got many. I like the idea. Okay, we have to find musicians to staff to sing at 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, which, by the
Yep.
way, is probably easier than finding musicians at 2 in the afternoon. Um,
True.
but what if somebody doesn't like metal music and they're coming in with, and you've got some screamo going on at 3 p.m.
It's restricted to acoustic only, even if it's screamo.
I like the concept of figuring it out. I think music really, to take your idea and just twist it a little bit. I do think
Yeah.
music one of the key components that actually could help this problem. Um, I don't necessarily know that it's a stage with a live band at 3 o'clock in the morning in the ER, but giving people access to music is something that can completely change their anxiety. I mean, that's why people love music. Everyone listens to music. Music connects, music calms, music can rally you up at times too. But
Hmm.
anyone, not many people don't enjoy music. So if you were waiting for
Yeah.
3 hours in a waiting room, and they said, "Here is iPod, right, with all these different songs, or free Wi-Fi, so you can go on Spotify and listen to anything you want," people would do it, and I think it would help.
Hmm.
It's I would
Yeah.
think more about pain if I didn't have fish blasting in the background.
Yeah. Interesting. Music is medicine, but
Bob Mar-
not as the distraction. Go
Bob
for it.
Marley, I believe, had a quote. It said, "The thing about music is that when it hits you, you feel no pain," and I think we could take something from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Directed consciousness. I mean, it's just like VR, just on a vibrational level. I think that's why music hits a little differently. You can't see it, you have to feel it.
Going back to the this whole original concept of putting people in a coma, in a comatose state,
Yeah.
I think we can really answer it by saying rather than completely disengaging people, let's completely engage them. And you get this.
Hey. So that's the idea then. The fix to this is to change it from a sleep company to some kind of engagement or entertainment solution. So a company that manages the entertainment options in the waiting room, some feedback loop of how happy they are. Yeah.
I 100% think that would be the way to go.
That's a really good idea. So we just we span 4 or 5 different industries over the course of this, and somehow entwined healthcare and music, which I think is really magical. And then came up with a potential, merger of media and healthcare, which coincidentally you run both. So
You ever
good.
go, do you ever go to restaurants, for example, and you see they have the little games that you can play at the tables, right?
Yeah,
Conceptually along those lines. It definitely give people something to do rather than just let entropy fail.
yeah. I think that's great. I mean, it goes back to your Disney analogy too. My favorite part of Disney is how the whole park is soundtracked. Like when you're there, there's literally a theme song to everything you do, which is unbelievable. Um, but yeah, those little touch points, no one thinks about that, and it really does make a difference.
I think in healthcare, we're so overwhelmed by what seems to be crises, people coding, dying, life and death all around, right? Major staffing problems that the attention to details just doesn't seem important from, the higher ups in a lot of these organizations. But who knows?
Hmm.
Maybe this is a bottom up solution that could and should happen. I think it would be better
Yeah,
for overall.
interesting. Well, I mean, this is a super fantastic brainstorm on a really bad idea. So I thank you for your humility guiding us
I
through this.
enjoy it. That was great.
How do so how do people either find you or how do they follow Live for Live? Like, where's the best way to engage your businesses if they want to?
I'm on LinkedIn, Shua Seif, ShuaSeif. Happy to. I'm a little active on there, not too active. Live for Live Music. You can join our newsletter by just going to the website, liveforlivemusic.com, and you get all the daily emails, show reviews, and various concerts and shows that are coming up. We're going to be extremely active in New Orleans between April 25th and May 5th for Jazz Fest. We're putting on about 20 late nights, and we have our own music festival in
Wow.
between weekends called Days Between with some pretty big names. So by all means, come on, check it out, have some fun, be a good time. Nick, you're
Awesome.
invited.
Awesome. We'll try to get this out before then, get a little promo for you. But thank you so much for coming on. Super, super grateful to brainstorm with you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a good one.